Could soon be time to lay my bones.
No. You're my go-to guy. Without you, I'm out of business, Judge.
Frightening. It's a young man's game, Frank.
Way before The Lord of the Rings was adapted into an incredibly popular film franchise, it was already a favorite of mine. I remember vividly reading the books as a child, starting out with The Hobbit and then following with the mastodontic book that was Lord of the Rings. So when they decided to adapt it into a couple of films, it was inevitable that I'd get curious about the director behind the big screen adaptations. This is actually when I realized that Jackson had actually started his career making a bunch of splatter comedies, much in the vein as one of my other favorite directors, Sam Raimi, who made the Evil Dead series. With that being said, Peter Jackson is the third highest grossing film director of all time, his films having made over $6.5 billion worldwide, proving in some way that even if a director starts out by making cheap splatterhouse style films, they can still rise and become one of the more successful directors of all time. With that being said, this video will look back at Peter Jackson's early career until his rise to fame in Hollywood and the Lord of the Rings trilogy. So without any further ado, who is Peter Jackson? Jackson was born on October 31st, 1961 in Wellington, New Zealand, and was raised at the nearby coastal town of Pukerua Bay. As a child, Jackson was a keen film fan growing up on Ray Harryhausen's films, as well as finding inspiration in the television series Thunderbirds and Monty Python's Flying Circus. After a family friend gave the Jacksons a Super 8 cinema camera with Peter in mind, he began making short films with his friends. Jackson has long cited King Kong as his favorite film, and around the age of 9 he attempted to remake it using his own stop-motion models. As a young adult, Jackson discovered the works of author j.r.r. Tolkien after watching the 1978 The Lord of the Rings animated film by Ralph Bakshi that was a part adaptation of Tolkien's fantasy trilogy. When he was 16 years old, Jackson left school and began working full-time as a photo engraver for a Wellington newspaper, the Evening Post. For the 7 years he worked there, Jackson lived at home with his parents so he could save as much money as possible to spend on film equipment. After 2 years of work, Jackson bought a 16mm camera and began shooting a film that year that became Bad Taste. This feature was a haphazard fashion splatter comedy which took years to make. It included many of Jackson's friends acting and working on it for free. Shooting was normally done in the weekends since Jackson was then working full-time. Bad Taste is about aliens that come to Earth with the intention of turning humans into food. Jackson had 2 acting roles, including a famous scene in which he fights himself on top of a cliff. The film was finally completed thanks to a late injection of finance from the New Zealand Film Commission. In May 1987, Bad Taste was unveiled at the Cannes Film Festival, where rights to the film quickly sold to 12 countries. Jackson's next film was Meet the Feebles, which was released in 1989 and was an ensemble musical comedy starring Muppet-style puppets. It began as a very low budget, but then went weeks over schedule. Jackson stated of his second feature-length film, "It's got a quality of humor that alienates a lot of people. It's very dark, very satirical, very savage." Meet the Feebles marked Jackson's first collaboration with special effects team Richard Taylor and Tanya Roger, who would later work on all of Jackson's movies. This actually led to one of my favorite Jackson projects aside from the Lord of the Rings saga. This movie was a zombie horror comedy called Brain Dead, which was released in 1992 and retitled in North America as Dead Alive. Made on a budget of $3 million, Brain Dead was Jackson's most expensive film up to that point. The movie starts out with an explorer called Stuart McAlden who has just captured a Sumatran rat monkey, which is a hybrid creature. During the team's escape, the explorer gets killed by the island's warrior natives, but the rat still manages to get shipped to Wellington Zoo in New Zealand. In Wellington, Lionel Groves lives in a Victorian mansion with his domineering mother Vera. Lionel falls in love with a Spanish-Romani shopkeeper's daughter, Paquita Maria Sanchez, who is convinced the two are destined to be together. When the two visit the Wellington Zoo together on a date, Vera follows them and is bitten by the rat monkey which attacked her, and though she appears fine initially, the following day she grows more and more decrepit, culminating in her eating her own ear after it falls off in a custard during a lunch with colleagues, and later eating Paquita's dog. Now that Vera's got the bite, the virulent infection is rapidly turning her into a pus-squirting, flesh-eating living dead, and the volatile situation starts getting out of hand as an ever-growing collection of dead bodies and other stimulant-enhanced zombie misfits start to cram Lionel's basement. As the situation gets worse and worse, Lionel is obliged to man up and clean up the mess. This movie is definitely extremely bloody, but the humor really makes it worth the watch. In some ways, it's almost a combination of a Tex Avery cartoon set in a horror movie. For the film's climactic scene wherein Lionel massacres a horde of zombies with a lawnmower, a reputed 300 liters of fake blood was used. With the success of this bloody movie, Jackson worked on a movie called Heavenly Creatures, which was based on the notorious Parker Hoole murder, and then the following year he co-directed the mockumentary Forgetting Silver, which followed the story of New Zealand film pioneer Colin Mackenzie, who had supposedly invented color film and talkies and attempted an epic film of Salmon before being forgotten by the world. Making all these popular projects in New Zealand really helped pave the way for Jackson's first big-budget Hollywood film, The Frighteners, which is another horror comedy and stars my all-time favorite actor Michael J. Fox. Peter Jackson and co-writer Fran Walsh conceived the idea for The Frighteners in 1992 during the script writing phase of Heavenly Creatures. Together they wrote a 3-page film treatment and sent it to their talent agent in Hollywood. Robert Zemeckis viewed their treatment with the intention of directing The Frighteners as a spin-off film of the television series Tale from the Crypt. Zemeckis hired Jackson and Walsh to turn their treatment into a full-length feature. Zemeckis was so impressed with their script that he decided The Frighteners would work better directed by Jackson and executive produced by Zemeckis and funded, distributed by Universal Pictures. The story of The Frighteners starts in 1990 with the architect Frank Bannister's wife, Deborah, dying in a car accident. Because of this tragic event, he abandons his profession and his unfinished dream house sits incomplete for years. As a result of being in a car accident that brought him on the brink of death, Frank gained the power to see ghosts and befriends 3 of them: 1970s street gangster Cyrus, 1950s nerd Stewart, and the Judge, a gunslinger from the Old West. Thanks to his 3 ghostly friends, he starts a business where he cons people into exorcising their house from ghosts. After a series of deaths, including one of his clients, Frank discovers there is an entity appearing as the Grim Reaper, killing people around him. As he tries to piece together the supernatural mystery of these killings, he falls in love with the wife of one of the victims and has to keep on dealing with a crazy FBI agent that thinks that he may be the culprit behind all of these murders. The Frighteners ended up being a box office disappointment, mostly due to competition from Independence Day. In interviews conducted years after The Frighteners' release, Jackson commented he was disappointed by Universal's marketing campaign, including a poster which didn't tell you anything about the picture, which he believed was the primary reason the film was not a financial success. In 1997, Jackson won the rights to film Tolkien's epic after meeting with producer Saul Zaentz. Originally working with Miramax Films towards a 2-film production, Jackson was later pressured to render the story as a single film and finally overcame a tight deadline by making a last-minute deal with New Line, who were keen on a trilogy. Principal photography for the trilogy stretched from October 11, 1999 to December 22, 2000, with extensive location filming across New Zealand. With the benefit of extended post-production and extra periods of shooting before each film's release, the series met with huge success and sent Jackson's popularity soaring. Set in the fictional world of Middle-earth, the films follow the Hobbit Frodo Baggins as he and the Fellowship embark on a quest to destroy the One Ring, to ensure the destruction of its maker, the Dark Lord Sauron. The Fellowship eventually splits up and Frodo continues the quest with his loyal companion Sam and the treacherous Gollum. Meanwhile, Aragorn, heir in exile to the throne of Gondor, along with Legolas, Gimli, Boromir, Mirror, and the wizard Gandalf, unite to rally the free peoples of Middle-earth in the War of the Ring to aid Frodo by distracting Sauron's attention. Lord of the Rings was one of the biggest and most ambitious film projects ever undertaken, with a budget of $281 million. The first film in the series premiered at the Odeon Leicester Square in London on December 10, 2001. The second film premiered at the Ziegfeld Theatre in New York City on December 5, 2002, and the third film premiered at the Embassy Theatre in Wellington on December 1, 2003. An extended edition of each film was released on home video a year after its release in cinemas. The film was the first of the fantasy film genre to win the award for Best Picture and was the second sequel to win Best Picture, the first being The Godfather Part 2. Jackson's mother, Joan, died 3 days before the release of the first movie in the trilogy, The Fellowship of the Ring. There was a special showing of that film after her funeral. The Lord of the Rings is widely regarded as one of the greatest and most influential film series ever made. It was a major financial success and is among the highest grossing film series of all time with $2.991 billion worldwide. Each film was critically acclaimed with high praise for their innovation in special effects, acting, set design, musical score, and emotional depth, and heavily awarded. The series won 17 out of its 30 Academy Award nominations. With this, I'd like to conclude the first part of my two-part retrospective on Peter Jackson. I really hope that you guys enjoyed following Jackson and his rise to fame and making possibly the most epic fantasy trilogy of the 20th century. Please be sure to subscribe and hit the like button. Leave me a comment too and let me know what your favorite Peter Jackson movie is. Have a great day, and I'll see you guys in the next video.